from a non-union environment to a union environment, and that union environment is at Kaiser Permanente. What was that breaking point? What did it look like to either one of you?
One time when I went in to see my manager for my annual review, and she had told me, like, you know, you're a great asset to the office, you know, you're doing great, thank you for all the hard work you do, we appreciate your job, however, we can't afford to give you a raise this year. And so I felt like that right there just told me, okay, it's time for me to move on and start looking somewhere else, because, you know, I was making all those hard sacrifices and hard decisions on the back end as far as like being able to survive. So that right there just let me know that that was not the place for me to continue working. Like I had to look elsewhere.
Well, me growing up, Kaiser was always my dream job. I don't know. Just knowing that people that worked at Kaiser, they always said it was hard to get into Kaiser, but I know people that was in Kaiser for many, many years. It just seemed like it was stability, it was growth, it was protected. And so even going through school, I was like, I'm gonna be working at Kaiser. That's where I'm going. So I was building up to get to Kaiser.
Wow.
Yeah.
My story more or less is that I ran into a college buddy of mine that we played ball together, and he said to me, hey, you know, you need to come on over to Kaiser. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm keeping my options open, right? Because back then Kaiser had a whole nother name to it. So he invited me. He was my hiring manager, so I got on board, no problem. But I got on board on the non-union side of the house, right? And I explained to you how much the higher benefits are, right? You know, you could pay out way more. You got to choose between dental and vision and all that other stuff. Then I have a friend of mine that works in a facility that's on the union side of the house, right? And I wasn't aware that the benefits were a whole lot better, right? On the union side. So I made that transition, and I must say that was a great transition. Still within the same company, but it's like night and day when you go from a non-union environment to a union environment. So for me, I made that transition. I'm happy where I am. The benefits are wonderful. Now I don't have to pay $900 a month. I don't have to choose between dental or vision. All right, I am able to get it all. Right?
And that was for me, but a lot of that I didn't learn until I got to Kaiser.
Okay.
I didn't learn about the union portion of it until I came into Kaiser. And I was like, oh, I have rights. Oh, we have a contract. They have to give me this, or we have to abide by this. That was totally different for me. And I learned all that coming into Kaiser. I was very grateful I didn't have to pay for our benefits, and knowing that my whole family's covered, and from vision to dental to 401k to pension to all of these things. I didn't have a clue because we didn't have this at the other job. So it was like I won when I came to Kaiser. That's how I felt, right? So yeah.
Well, for me it was a little bit different. I started on call, and so for me it was mainly like the pay. Like, you know, it was a step up in wages, and I went from making $19 an hour to making $25. So I'm like, you know, this is awesome. Like, I'm able to feel like comfortable, where I'm in a comfortable space financially where I can support my son. I didn't know about the benefits because, again, I was on call. Until I started hearing like my coworkers talking about like, oh, you know, like I remember one time they called me in for a shift and they said, oh, you know what, we scheduled you on accident, like we're not going to need you after all, so you can go back home. And so at that time, you know, I was living in Antioch and working in Pinole, so I had driven like over 45 minutes to get to work. And so one of my coworkers kind of like pulled me aside and said, you know, did you know that, you know, because we're part of the union, if they call you in and you show up to work, they're supposed to pay you for at least 4 hours of your work. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But again, you know, I'm coming in with afraid to speak up. Like, you know, I'm still like in the mode of my last job. So I'm like, okay, thanks for that. But I didn't really follow through. But after that, I was on call for a year, and then I went to the call center. And when I was at the call center, I had a rep who was part of our team that was very good about sharing information, and she was always, you know, wanting to get us involved more in the union, and that's where I got my benefits finally. So it was definitely a blessing. And like you were saying, it was night and day. You know, I didn't have to pay $600 anymore or be afraid that I'm making too much and not qualify, you know, for assistance. So I was able to have that burden lifted off of my shoulders and be able to, you know, focus on, okay, I'm going to go to work, you know, I'm going to be able to provide for me and my son.
Right.
So it was definitely a burden lifted off my shoulders.